For lesson 7-1, we're going to keep it pretty short and sweet here. We're going to talk about the circumference and area of a circle formulas. Um, you do need to download the circumference and area formula, or excuse me, the MCA3 formula sheet that I posted on Moodle. Please download that, and we will be updating it throughout this chapter by adding more formulas to it. But that is the formula sheet that you will be allowed to see while taking the MCA test. So we'll want to refer to that periodically from during this chapter. A circumference of a circle, I always think of that as like the perimeter of a circle. You think of perimeter as around the outside. So circumference is around the outside of a circle. In order to find the circumference of a circle, we need to use an irrational number called pi. It has this symbol there, so circumference equals pi. Often you can use 3.14 to represent pi. And then you'll multiply by the diameter. Now the diameter is all the way across the circle through the center of the circle. Now, if you don't know the diameter, but instead they give you what's called the radius is just from the center of the circle to the edge of the circle. So you can think of that as like half of the diameter. So we can either do circumference equals pi times the diameter, or if you don't know the diameter, but instead you know the radius, we can do circumference equals 2 times pi times r. Because basically, 2r equals d. So it's just a little bit nicer to say 2 pi r rather than saying 2r pi or pi 2r. It's just a little bit, it rolls off the tongue a little bit better saying 2 pi r. So it's either pi d or 2 pi r, circumference. There's a little nursery rhyme that one of my teachers in high school taught us, and that was twinkle, twinkle, little star, circumference equals 2 pi r. So be prepared to recite that nursery rhyme tomorrow in class. Again, twinkle, twinkle, little star, circumference equals 2 pi r. Now, when dealing with the area, just like normal area, usually whenever we say area, we want to think about our units being squared. Well, that will help us with this as well, because to find area of a circle, we're going to again use that irrational number pi, and we're going to multiply it by the radius squared. So for the area formula, we cannot use the diameter. I will repeat that. For the area formula, you cannot use the diameter. So if they give us the diameter, you have to divide it by 2, and then square that answer and multiply by pi. So I will write that kind of little difference there. I'll put d divided by 2 and then put this in parentheses and then square it times pi. Or we can do area equals pi r squared. Again, we're squaring r because we're finding the area. Okay, so let's do some examples. It says find the circumference and area of the circles, round to the nearest tenth. So, first of all, circumference equals pi times the diameter. I'm using this formula because they give us the diameter. All right, if they would have gave me the radius, I would have wrote 2 pi r. So I'm getting myself ready to use the formula that I need. So now let's substitute. So we have circumference equals, now let's use 3.14 for pi, and the diameter is 5. So now we have our numbers plugged in. Now we can go to our calculator and do 3.14 times 5, and that equals 15.7. So C equals 15.7 feet. All right, notice I'm solving for circumference, so this is just feet. It's not feet squared. The only time we square it is for area. Okay, so we just solved for the circumference of this circle. Now let's do area equals pi r squared. That's the formula for area. Now notice again, I do not have the radius. So that means I'm going to have to take 2.5 divided by 2, which equals 2.5. So area equals 3.14 times 2.5 squared. All right. So let's go ahead and jump to our calculator. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do 2.5 times 2.5. Now, if you have a squared button, you can use that instead. So this says 6.25. So I could go 2.5, and then I could use my x squared button. Okay, so that squares it to get 6.25. Now I need to multiply that by 3.14 to get 19.625. I'm going to write 19.625. Now it says round to the nearest tenth, so area equals 19.6 feet squared. So this would be my final answer, rounded to the nearest tenth correctly. Okay, so that problem now is complete. I found the circumference and area of that circle. Now, we need to find the circumference and area of this circle. So, I'm going to change colors so we can keep them separate. This time they give us a radius, so I'm going to say circumference equals 2 pi r. So circumference equals 2 times 3.14 times the radius, which is 3.8. So it's just a matter of plugging numbers into the formula. All right, so circumference equals 2 times 3.14 times 3.8. All right, so we'll go ahead and write that whole thing. 23.864. And then we can round to the nearest tenth, so 23.9, and that'll just be meters, and that's my answer for circumference. Now, area equals pi r squared, so area equals 3.14 times 3.8 squared. Area equals, all right, we can go ahead and throw that in the calculator, 3.14 times, well, excuse me, let's actually do the other part first, okay? So we need to do 3.8, let me clear this first. So let's do 3.8 squared times 3.14, because we have to do our exponents first, okay, follow order of operations. So we get 45.3416, 45.3416. So 45.3416. Now round that to the nearest tenth, so 45.3 meters squared. All right, and that would be my answer for area of that circle. Now, I know you probably noticed on the MCAs, they might say answer it in terms of pi. When they say that, they don't actually want you to multiply by 3.14 or by using the pi button on your calculator. Essentially, as soon as you multiply by pi, you are going to have an estimate for an answer. The only way to have an exact answer is to answer it in terms of pi. And so what they mean by that is, for example, looking at this problem right here, we would, instead of actually multiplying by 3.14, we'll just leave it in pi form. So I would just do 2 times 3.8. Okay, this 2 times 3.8. That gives us 7.6. So if I were to answer that in terms of pi, I would say C equals 7.6 pi meters. Okay, that's how you would answer it in terms of pi. All right, just like this example over here, I would just do 3.8 squared to get 14.44. So I would write area equals 14.44 pi meters squared, okay, or rounding to the nearest tenth, 14.4 pi meters squared. So that's what it looks like in terms of pi. So we're not actually multiplying by 3.14, or we're not multiplying by the pi button on your calculator. You're just leaving that pi term in there. And that's why they say in terms of pi. So if you see anything like that, you will then know what that means and what that reference is, so you should leave pi in there. You can do everything else, just do not multiply by pi. And that's it for our examples for today. So finding circumference and area of a circle.